You may be thinking about applying to an MFA program. You may be thinking about getting a degree. You may be thinking of actually becoming a professor in academia. So, we're going to be talking with a great poet who's actually doing all those things so that way you can have an idea what to expect when you're in this world. We're going to be speaking with Mathias Jackson. He is a professor at OSU in their poetry department. He is also a fellow Cave Canem graduate, which is super, super exciting. Guys, give a nice warm welcome to Marcus. What's up, my man?
What's up, Jeff? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. How are you today?
Good, good, good. Enjoying the last stretches of this warmth before it really
Facts.
gets chilly.
Got you. I know also, when is the semester over for OSU?
Usually, the first or the last week of classes are about the first week of December, and then
Okay.
finals week the following week, and then grades are usually in maybe around the December 20th.
It's like we're like
So
home stretch pretty much.
yeah,
Maybe
once you get to
Thanksgiving break and
November,
stuff.
it
Yeah.
goes. The semester is pretty much vanishing. So
I feel that. Marcus, I know I just gave a quick intro, but can you, for the people who aren't familiar with you and your work, can you also kind of just give us another um, tidbit about yourself?
yeah, I'm a mind blowing poet and photographer. A poet and photographer. I have been teaching at Ohio State in the MFA program of creative writing there since 2016. Originally from Toledo, Ohio, lived in New York for about 8 years, and then taught at Rutgers, Middle Tennessee State, and then landed here at Ohio State. And currently, I'm directing the MFA program. And I also have some experience teaching in a low residency program at Queen's
Got
University
you.
in Charlotte. So
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
do kind of want to hit on like some of the differences between low res and full residency, because
Can we actually?
there are great options out there depending on what people's lifestyles are.
Well, let's jump right into that then. So, having experience with Queens, I know a couple people graduated from Queens, and actually, I've never really heard any bad things about it. Everyone I've heard has very positive things to say about that.
You haven't
Versus
talked to any
being
of my former students?
That's like, I don't know if they were your students or not. I'll have to double check with them.
No, it's a really good program.
So, like, what are some things? How about from just like a professor side? What are some of the differences you see between being a professor at a low res versus being a professor over there?
Yeah, I think the students who are in low residency programs, since they're only on campus with each other, with faculty, for about 7 to 10 days per semester, I think they maximize their time on campus. The rest of it's distance learning, and you're sending manuscripts to the workshop group through online methods. But when they're on campus, they really maximize pretty much every hour that they're there. And there's much more of I would say, like a celebratory, I'm so glad to get this time in person with my community type of
Yeah, I could
vibe,
see that. I could see that. Yeah,
And then since people are kind of coming from different places and they're in different stages of their everyday work careers and their family lives, um, they tend to like need to catch up with each other, and it's just got a different vibe because they're not around each other that much. The full residency programs, I mean, you're kind of like, from a student standpoint, you're usually teaching composition or a creative writing workshop. If you're at a funded program like ours, that's the trade-off: is you get to teach to
yeah.
not pay tuition. So you're busy on a day-to-day basis. You're taking classes. You're on campus for the entire semester, and things can get a little bit stressful. And there are just different ebbs and flows in terms of the vibes. Um,
Would Would you recommend? By the way, our co-host Matthias here. Matthias is Marcus.
hey,
Marcus
Matthias.
Matthias.
Hey there, Marcus. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. It's good to be talking to you.
I want to talk a little bit more about that experience. So OSU is nice because it you get paid. Um,
It should be more. I wish the university would give
I
us
mean,
more to pay
just
students.
we can talk all about funding for days, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Would you advise that for an MFA student to be like, hey, you're going to be in this MFA, um, you're going to get paid, but you're also, you're it's a job. You're at school and a job. Like, would you advise that for someone that sort of
Yeah, I that's a probably the most important
like? Do
point
you
when
think
you're
that that is
projecting.
something that's advisable, like for a new MFA student?
I think that
Sorry, I know we cut out briefly.
it's
Do you think that's
no, it's
advisable?
all good.
Yeah.
It's just different person to person, applicant to applicant, because I personally, when I went to MFA, damn it, how long ago was that? over 20 years ago now. So when I went, I didn't go to teach. I didn't really go because I wanted to eventually be permanently in academia. I went because I wanted to become the best writer and the best reader that I could be. And I wanted to be around a community of writers that, just kind of blew me away, that showed me
Yeah.
all the brilliance and the boldness that existed in contemporary arts and letters. And then I wanted to learn from that community. Some people come in with a plan of like, I want to go A to B to C. I want to publish at this rate. As soon as I get into the MFA, I want to be on the trajectory where I'm able to teach in the tenure track within 5 years of finishing the MFA. If that's you, then it's pretty much a full residency MFA program or bust that has built in teaching opportunities. If you're not worried about teaching, I think that really expands the possibilities, because there are so many amazing programs. There are so many, like, we're in a golden age of American poetics in many ways. There are great teachers. There are countless amazing practitioners of poetry. And there are a lot of places where you can learn and find a community that kind of works for you. I would say that the full residency programs are more of a commitment, just because you're going to have your feet on the ground there and you're going to be doing multiple things. And teaching is, it can be difficult, and it can be sometimes emotionally draining. For me, when it comes to teaching workshops, I get more ideas during workshops and I get more inspiration from the writing that comes across those tables than maybe even anywhere. So for me, it fuels me. If that might not be the case for you, then you might want to lean toward a program that doesn't have teaching embedded in it.
I feel like that's a fair answer. When you did your MFA, was there a teaching component?
We got to teach, I think, most of us like one semester. So I got to teach an intro to creative writing workshop my final semester in MFA, which was I taught in that I taught fiction, poetry, and a little bit of the screenplay. I'm not a screenwriter, but I love drama, and I love the screenplay as a written artifact. And I think it's kind of close to some poetry. If you really break it down, it's closer to poetry than fiction is for me.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, teaching was like kind of over in the blink of an eye during my MFA. And then it was,
Yeah,
get
semester
out in
time
the
pretty
real
much.
world and figure it out.
I really enjoy. I think the perspective of having a screenplay more closely associated with poetry, because I think that a lot of times people use screenplays as like a vehicle to whatever other like medium that is going to be translated into. And I actually really enjoy just reading a really good screenplay, like something that
Mm.
is kind of out of the box, or something that I haven't really came across like my typical reading. And I think it translates somewhat differently than just like reading like typical, like, not, well, not even, I don't say typical, but like this, like nonfiction or fiction, like even just like having something in the screenplay format that you can really dig into. a good
Yeah,
a good
it's
120 pages.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's a quick read. It's very visual. and it's much more imagistic in some ways than long form fiction. Long form fiction excels and knocks it out of the box when it comes to developing the psychology of characters and immersing you in psychological evolutions and de-evolutions of characters. But screenplays, at least like more on the indie drama side, they're very visual and pretty groundbreaking when it comes to finding settings that are unique and finding movements between characters that are unique.
Yeah. Like as descriptive as you're encouraged to be, like there's still like a kind of an edge of, leave something up to the imagination to the reader, and like most nonfiction. But in that screenplay, it's like, no, you're the imagination. So write what you really want to be on screen.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of silence. I mean, some scripts are dialogue more. They're more dialogue heavy than others, but you have to use that silence, and you have to use the readers and the audience's imagination.
I feel like I'm like jumping. I don't want to go too far into a tangent. Have you ever watched a film and then went back to find the screenplay and read the screenplay?
Yes, definitely.
What's the most
That's
recent
how
one you've
that's how I do it. Because I don't really have an end to get screenplays before they're produced.
Yeah.
It's interesting
Yes.
to see what got left out, what got changed, and what version of the screenplay you end up getting access to, because it's usually just online. You kind of just find a website, you Google the name of the production and then screenplay, and then you might get a pre-production copy, and it's going to be pretty different than the finished product. But I mean, that's fun to me because you can see the author's original intent, and there are some scenes that never got in there, and the characters are slightly different. Some of the actual dialogue that may have made it, maybe in a scene that made it into the final production, are a little different, and it's fun. It's fascinating. It's because that's the ultimate team writing sport, is making films. Hundreds and sometimes thousands of people working on one artistic artifact. Whereas us, we're kind of just doing it dolo, and it's like, it's just me. Yeah. And then you can revise over time and get some input from other people. But yeah, it's a fascinating genre.
I wanted to add one other question just about teaching and pedagogy. So you mentioned that in your program you had a semester. That's not a lot of time. Like, to learn how to teach, that's not a lot of time. Like, if someone is really interested in pursuing poetry in academia, to be a professor, to have that role of pedagogy, what are the things that you think would be really helpful for them to do? Because it seems like a lot of MFA programs, a lot of people have in mind that they're going to be professors or teachers, but you don't necessarily see a whole lot of like pedagogical theory in practice a whole lot.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's every class that you're in, even in the undergraduate level, if you're an undergrad right now or you're going into undergrad soon, when you're in a class that thrills you, take notes on what the professor is doing. I was stupid enough to think my memory would always be great. So I tried to remember everything my favorite teachers were doing. And lucky enough for me, when I started teaching on my own, I still was able to like vividly recall a lot of the aspects of their pedagogy. But I would say take notes when you're around and in the classroom of your favorite professors. And then when you get to the graduate level, have coffee with the professors who are teaching in that department. Ask them for their statements of teaching philosophy. Ask them how their approaches in the classroom have changed over the last 10, 20 years if they've been in academia for that long.
I hope they've changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're changing. We're in a good space now because like workshop etiquette and vibe used to be much, much more harsh, and you just kind of have to fall silent and listen when your work was up. but there's a wonderful shift that's happening. And a lot of professors are doing things very, very differently. And I think there's a lot of chances for you to build from the ground up. And then once you get in the classroom, you're kind of going to be in a situation where you have to improvise. And each group, for me, that's what still excites me about each semester is like each group, especially we're talking about workshops, each group is so different, right? And everybody has so many different styles writing wise, and they have so many different sets of rapports, like semester to semester, group to group. And sometimes what you bring as a professor, even if it worked great last semester, you can tell right away that you're going to need to do something a little bit differently, and you're going to have to do more learning at the front end of the semester from the group and let the group lead a little bit. And for me, I'm always open to input, and I'm always trying to give students choices. Because in a graduate classroom, in a full residency scenario, it can get intense, and they're getting to the point too where they're starting to have some publishing pressure. Some of them, if that's what they want to do. So you got to be careful. Everybody's vulnerable, and we're all here to make our art better. And as long as whoever is leading the workshop values those points, then I think the group with the professor is going to figure it out as it happens. But you just talk to as many people as you can who are in the workshop leader roles, or who are teaching seminars, and just try to build it from the ground up and be yourself. I mean, that's the thing is like, if you try to act like for me, if I came in and had like a corduroy blazer on and wanted to stand at a podium and start each workshop with a half-hour lecture on iambic pentameter, which I would love to talk about iambic pentameter, but I wouldn't present it that way, just because it's still kind of happening in academia, that presentation mode. If that makes sense. It's like, I want to go in and, maybe start by talking about things outside of poetics, and then we'll work our way to the real conversation. Because we have 3 hours in a graduate seminar. Like it's not this archaic performance. And I do think students at any level, they really, really gravitate toward any type of workshop leader who can be themselves, and who can support their own ideas, and who's interested in what they're bringing to the space.
Yeah, and you can absolutely tell like people that are like you gravitate to people that have like a real like visible passion for their work. So like if you kind of come in formatted and like, okay, this is my 50th time doing this and I'm just trying to like slug through it, then like your receiver, they're going to be able to get a sense of that pretty quickly. So as long as if you're being yourself and you're actually passionate about the space that you're in, like, yeah, the students are absolutely going to receive that.
Yeah, that's the key ingredient, right? Is the passion side of it. Because you can be yourself and like not care about the material, and then it's like the students have nothing.
Yeah.
The students can't get
Unfortunately,
anything.
I'm incredibly passionate about corduroy jackets, and so that's like my only thing.
I think it's hard too, because you can fall into a trap where you taught something for so long, you just keep the same. Like I had an American history professor in undergrad, and it's like, well, okay, American history, 1700s, 1800s isn't changing anytime soon. So it's like,
Right.
he's been teaching for 30 years the same notes, and why change? But it's like, but man, we have learned new things. Like we can still mix this up. Like I think
Do a Hamilton.
always be, like just finding new ways to present information, being flexible. It's like that human element teaching is so key, but I think not all professors are always thinking about that.
We're lucky in our field. because, every month there's a new batch of literary magazines that have,
It's true.
the next wave of contemporary poetics. And, this is brand new. So we have to,
Yeah.
we're constantly adding to our catalog
Yeah.
as readers.
I want to talk about that new wave a little bit. So people are looking into MFA programs. Who do you think should be considering MFAs in poetry? Like, trying to be like as realistic as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, especially if you're not going to be in a program that's going to pay you, and if you're considering paying yourself, who should be that person that considers being responsible for covering their own education to get an MFA, versus who do you think should maybe rethink that decision?
Yeah, I think it's access to community, faculty, and literary resources. If you have, and I should swap out faculty for mentors, because we all need mentors at different stages of our artistic careers. If you don't have access to a really strong library system, to mentors and community members who are also working in the same genre that you are, who are aspiring toward making great art, then that's kind of what the MFA is set up for, right? To centralize all of those things. And it doesn't matter what stage you're at in your writing life, the MFA can be great for you if you don't have access to one or all of those things. If you have access and you feel good about access to those things, you might not need an MFA. An MFA can also help you a little bit in sort of navigating like how to publish and connect you networking wise, especially for those of you who are in prose. A lot of us poets don't even need literary agents. We kind of just deal directly with publishers and editors. We might eventually need booking agents when we're doing a lot of gigs, but for those of you who are in prose, I think the networking side of it can be potentially really beneficial, especially from a mentorship and a faculty standpoint, where you get connected with a faculty mentor. They already have published books. They already have an agent representing them, and they can really help you navigate what is a complex set of obstacles. But I mean, from a very, very brass tacks standpoint, like if you're making your art, you're in a community where other artists are doing the same thing in a healthy way, you're feeding off them, they're feeding off you. You might have one or two mentors in that community, and you have a library card and you live in a city. I mean, you can reach your wildest poetic heights with those elements. Like an MFA is not required. So if you do feel lack in those areas, then you might consider really looking at different MFA programs. And then when deciding on which to apply to, and it's different person to person. Yeah. When I first started working at Ohio State, I was talking to a colleague, Lee Martin, who's an amazing fiction writer. Also has published a couple books on nonfiction, but very, very well known as a novelist. His advice to people is faculty, funding, and location. So when it comes to a full residency program, funding's different for all of us, right? If you got money, please give me some. No, if you got money, great. You can kind of go anywhere. You don't have to worry about funding. If you don't, I would advise you to only apply to places that can significantly fund your time in that graduate program. A lot of the more public state schools will tend to have funding. The private schools, it's just kind of a mixed bag, and it's very competitive at both of those. And then faculty, like, are you excited about the faculty that are there? The faculty that are there, do you know their work? If you don't know their work, way before you apply, read some of their work. Just to be real, if you think their work is whack, why would you want to work with them? They might be really generous teachers, but if your aesthetics are very, very different than theirs, you're going to have another set of hurdles when you get there. Because it's like, oh, I write only in form. And the person who's there writes this really experimental free verse that's all over the page using the page as a field. It's not going to be a mix that is really productive. So faculty is the second one. And I will tell you too, it's like some faculty who maybe you're writing heroes, they might also be the most generous teachers ever. That's kind of something that you don't know until you get there. So that's always an uncertainty. Um, so just try, if you are able to get access to them in the application process, or if you're lucky enough to get accepted, just try to have a meeting with them, coffee with them before you make your final decision and try to gauge, oh, are they here? Are they checked in? Are they not?
Yeah.
That might be something that really, really matters to you. And for me also, it's location. Like if you have a family and a really busy life, then you have most likely less location choices. And that's why a low residency could be good for you, because you only have to pop in, for 1 week out of the semester. But if you don't have like a really dug in family life and you don't have to stay exactly where you are right now and you're kind of mobile, I would say really heed where the programs are. So if you're a rural person and you hate the city, I love NYU to death. That's where I went. That's an amazing program. I wouldn't recommend, if the city scares you, to apply to that program, because even if you get in and you get funded, you're going to have a lot of trouble just on your day to day trying to survive and trying to stay mentally and physically healthy, let alone write your best work. And vice versa. Like I'm a city kid, so if I didn't apply to any rural schools, I just didn't, because I knew that like if the program ended up not to my liking or something really rubbed me wrong at whatever program I ended up in, I would kind of be stuck. And it's like I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be out here in shabumblefuck. That's just this is how I felt, and I trusted that, and I only applied to cities. I only applied to programs in cities because I knew that, if the program went bust for me, I'd still be in a city that I liked.
Yeah. I just want to touch on faculty. Like, I think even better is if you can find a program. I do not have my MFA, to be clear. I would strongly, though, recommend trying to pick a program where there's faculty with at least like 2 or 3 people that you want to work with, because, Marcus, I know you've been at OSU a while, which is great. That's not the case for a lot of people. People bounce around.
Definitely.
And we've all heard stories of the people that, oh, I went to this one program because so and so was there, and then my second semester they left, and I
Yep.
didn't like anyone else there. And so then you're stuck. Like, do you transfer? Do you stop? Do you keep going? Like, it's if it's just one person, I think you really gotta sit with yourself, because you can even talk to them and they might even be like, oh yeah, I'll definitely be there. But then the next offer comes up or something exciting happens or a sabbat, like you just never know.
Right. Yeah. Multiple faculty, and that's a really good clarification. And I think too, another reason we're kind of in this sweet spot for contemporary arts and letters is people are working interdisciplinary approaches and multi-genre approaches, and there are a good deal of programs that value that. And even if you're researching a program that you might apply to, read in other genres that you might be just a little bit curious about. If you're like, maybe one day I'll write a memoir, then see what the creative nonfiction faculty are doing, because you might very well take a class with them, or at some point, show them some work. So for sure, you want to be able to find connection with the work of multiple faculty members.
Marcus, I know we're getting up against time, and again, I really appreciate you spending part of your evening talking with us. I have a couple of kind of just real quick questions for you, ones that I don't want you to think too long about, just kind of like gut response.
Yeah.
Okay. First question for you. What do you think is the best age to start an MFA program at?
Ooh, 30. That number just popped into my head.
I think okay.
30 is a
What
good one. I think on average, the 30-ish folks that start programs usually do well.
I get scared from like the 22-year-olds. I don't know. I always get a little like, you're really young.
There are some ballers that come in really, really young, and I mean they're writing at such a high level. But I do think that if we're lucky enough to stay healthy, writing is
Yeah.
a kind of lifetime sport to where you
Yeah.
can, the longer you're in it, the more tricks you learn and the
Mm-hmm.
more you kind of get comfortable with your own voice.
What's one of your favorite teaching activities?
Ooh, getting out of the classroom. So like
Okay.
taking the group to a gallery or a museum, or just being like, we're not doing class. We're doing karaoke, and then after karaoke, we'll talk about some poems, or we'll write a poem together. We'll write a chanteau together, or we'll write, what did they used to be called? Like an exquisite corpse, which is kind of a bleak term, but it's like, one person writes one line, passes it to the next person, and you just slowly make a poem
Is that the
as
name
you
for
work.
it? I've never heard. Interesting.
Exquisite
Okay.
corpse, I think, used
This
to
is,
be one of the phrases for it.
yeah.
Like you tell your class you're doing that, and then you just rip the elbow pads off your corduroy jacket,
Oh
and you're like, "We're getting loose today, class."
Right,
Oh
no
my
class.
gosh.
This isn't the class you're used to.
Marcus, what is the worst part of teaching?
Ooh,
I won't
the
tell
worst
anyone.
part of teaching. No, the
Only you
worst
two
part of
will know.
teaching, I'll say, when it comes to workshops, is the constant worry that something hurtful might be said about someone's work that causes them to doubt their own voice, or that could eventually cause them to stop writing altogether. That's the
Has it
hardest,
ever
most
happened?
difficult thing. And just monitoring that and being like, I hope nothing too harsh gets said. I hope that people have context and they know that what happens in this workshop, or what one person says about one little moment in their poem, isn't going to be the end all be all. And it's just, you never know, because like
Yeah.
people are writing about the most vulnerable aspects of their personal life or their imagination, and a lot of hurt can happen. So worrying about that is never fun.
Who is a poet that you're reading right now?
Ooh, well, I did too long of a presentation on two Larry Levis books. So that's a poet who's no longer with us, and a poet who is young and doing their thing. Solmaz Sharif, whose work I go back to over and over. And I want to give another shout out to Camille Rankin, who has one of my favorite books of the last, I don't know, couple decades.
What's the title?
Incorrect Merciful Impulses. Copper Canyon. It came out the same season as Ocean's first book,
Mm.
Night Sky with
Yeah,
Exit
yeah.
Wounds.
Exit
Those
Wounds.
books came out in the same season on the same press. So, and I love that book.
Favorite Cave Kana memory?
Oh, too many to name, but I'll go. I think the first year is always the most awe-inspiring, at least the first few days, because you're like, this place is actually real.
Yeah.
I would say I think it was the Monday, so the first day of workshops. That night, a huge dance party transpired in somebody's suite, and so many luminaries of Black poetics were dancing and singing and shouting, so much so that the party got broken up.
Good.
By campus security had to get called. That's how fun it was. But it was like,
That's a good
I could
dance
count
party.
five of my 10 poetry heroes, heroines, idols that were there in that space, and just enjoying every moment. And I was like, wow, okay, this is what a real arts community is.
You sounded like Owen Wilson when you said "wow." So, wow. So many luminaries.
Marcus, I have one final question for you. I want you to finish the sentence, okay? The future of poetry is...
Unpredictable.
Well, I was like, all right.
Yeah. And to give you another ending, the future of poetry is, I think it's bright. I think it's bright.
Cool. Marcus, you're going to be joining us in December on December 14th at the Columbus Museum of
Yeah.
Art. We're doing a series of talks. It's called Write Up for 2025. Advice to myself as a younger artist or poet. We're excited to have you, man. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you both.
Cool. All right, Marcus, I'll let you go. I know it's late. Thank you so
Okay.
much for your time, man. We'll see you
Yeah.
later, okay?
I'll see ya.
You have a good night,
Hey,
man.
take care. All right, bye. Matthias, thanks for stopping by.
Anytime.
Cool.
Well, I guess every time, every Tuesday. So
Yes.
there's that.
Cool. Any last things to kind of close us out on?
Drink your water.
Drink your water is always good. Yeah.
Very important.
So like I said, we're doing a series of talks on December 14th at the Columbus Museum of Art in Columbus. We're basically taking all those names that you can see down there. Ajanae Dawkins, this guy as well. Chuck Salmons, the former president of the Ohio Poetry Association. Donte Woods-Spikes, videographer, archivist. And Marcus. And basically, again, we've tasked them with trying to let everyone know advice that they would give to themselves as a younger artist. So if you would like to hang with us and hear these words of inspiration and things to get you ready for 2025 for your poetry and your writing, you can go to theversuspoetry.com to register. Please note that registration closes on December 1st, and then the event itself will be on December 14th. Cool.
Exciting times.
All right, guys, with that, we will see you all later. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks again to Marcus for being with us as well for our chat. Once more, my name is Jeff.
I'm Mathias.
Guys, we'll see you later. I hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, and a good afternoon. You all take care.